Hey, folks, welcome to my favorite shitty movie. Oh my God, we're live! It's live! It's live, my favorite shitty movie. If you're watching this now, you only get it for a certain amount of time and then it's gone. Facebook is canceling all the live videos after 30 days. So if you want old episodes of this, download it now. Download them now. I'm very excited about tonight's show. We've got Frank Stokes back on the show. He's a writer, producer, director. He's a filmmaker and also a comic book maker. And we'll learn more about his comic book when he shows up on the show. But he picked this movie called The Creeping Terror, which I think, if I remember correctly, I probably saw the first time when I was a kid on the Creature double feature on Channel 56 on the UHF in Massachusetts back in the day. If I said UHF and you're like, what is that? Google it, you guys. You're kids. But the point is, The Creeping Terror is sort of a magical bad movie. You can't mount any defense against this movie as being good, but you can mount a defense about this movie as being very entertaining, and it is. And you'll see a Anderson family reenactment later where I sort of exemplify the parts of this movie that I think are the best. A lot of people think they're the things with the lady in a bikini who can't get up while the thing in multiple sleeping bags is coming at her. Others will be like, why does Uncle Joe or whatever his name is get sucked into it? It's not important. What is important is this movie is ceaselessly entertaining throughout its running time. And most of the time, when there are long stretches of expository dialogue where two people are talking to each other and they get all the coverage, they're not messing around. They get the coverage. They have the shot, reverse shot, master shot, all of it. But you don't actually hear the dialogue that comes out of anyone's faces. They just talk to each other while a narrator who seems kind of bored tells you what's happening in the movie. This is why I love The Creeping Terror, is the scenes of expository dialogue. It's so good. Unbelievably good. It's perfect, I would like to say. But before I go on, let me bring on my co-host. She knows everything about movies. She wrote a chapter of a book that's out now called Cinema Bizarro about The Creeping Terror. So, the Frank Stokes, our guest, picked this without knowing that. So now we have Tracy Mercer, who wrote a whole thing in a book about this movie, and a great writer, director, producer, comic book creator on here to talk about this movie that's an hour and 10 minutes long. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tracy Mercer.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. That was the perfect intro. I co-signed all of that. And it's funny because we do get a lot of grief from some very dedicated viewers, and we hear you and you are seen about when we put on things that Gen X loves, like I might, let's say Coyote Ugly, DC Cab, The Lost Boys. We are aware they are not really shitty. They are touchstones to our generation. We love them.
I mean, but they're also arguably all shitty movies. But it's okay. It's okay to like stuff that's not that great.
Again, this is one of those things like when we dared to put Big Trouble in Little China on the show, and there was I thought we were going to have the villagers with the pitchforks come to our homes. Like we are very clear on, things that are flawed, that are wonderful, and all that good stuff. but this sometimes, so it's a fair criticism that sometimes we put films on that are not really shitty. They're actually lovely. And then the ethos of this show is we always punch up, because deep down we'd rather be entertained and see someone going for it than, again, some cynical, let's say $300 million remake of a live action whatever, or animated version of once was a live action whatever or whatever. Like, this is the kind of the fun of the show. And so I really feel like Francis, like, by bringing The Creeping Terror 1964, understood the assignment, as the kids today say. And what's gorgeous about this is absolutely an independent film made by crazy people doing crazy things. And as Todd mentioned, shameless plug, Cinema Bizarro, without Francis knowing, I was given a list by Steve Peros, who really was one of the great co-editor of this, and invited me to come back for the sequel book to Giant Beast Cinema. And I looked at the list and I saw the title of The Creeping Terror. Now, I've heard about this film because if you're into bad movies, it's legendary, right? So, like, if you go on right now and you say, like, worst movie ever made, you're probably going to get
a lot of people consider
you're going to get The Room, you're going to get Troll 2, you're going to get Plan 9 from Outer Space, and you're going to get The Creeping Terror. And it's like this like Olympics that only like nerds care about, and I am one of them, and I love it and I care very deeply. But what I loved about this when I chose it, because I thought this is an excuse for me to actually finally see the film. I hadn't seen it before I wrote about it, but I'd heard about it because it's so infamous. So I'm gonna just do me a solid. It's a paragraph, but I feel like
I'll just throw this in there, Tracy. This this movie choice gave me a reason to pull this out of the stacks.
Is that Playboy After Dark? What am I looking at?
No, it's Drive-In Cult Classic.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like porn, but it's not. I assure you.
They look like Shin and Tweed acolytes on your cover there.
Yeah, it's get everything from They Saved Hitler's Brain to this. You know,
it ties in because there's somebody in this film who was in They Saved Hitler's Brain. So there's a connection.
If you have $10 and any kind of player that will play DVDs, highly recommend this box set.
I love that. So I'm going to quickly get through this because I think this will set the table for the craziness to transpire. Because when you're armed with this knowledge is power, people. Believe me, books are still real, at least for the moment. The story behind The Creeping Terror with its infamous director is definitely more interesting than the film itself. But once you know the backstory, it makes viewing this cult classic even more entertaining. In fact, the behind-the-scenes insanity of this film is a jumping-off point for a 2014 independent film called The Creep Behind the Camera. Said real-life creep would be the director, who is credited on the film, depending on what version you're watching, as Vic Savage. Savage was a pseudonym for the real-life baddie, whose name is AJ Art Nilsson. A detailed look into Nilsson's life reveals accusations including his being, wait for this awesome list, a con artist, a wife beater, a drug abuser, child porn peddler, and bigamist. Some accounts suggest he shot the actor who played Alfalfa on The Little Rascals, ran afoul of mobster Mickey Cohen. You know, if you're going to do something, do it right. You know what I'm saying? Also, he may have stalked Baby Van Doren. So there's that. And he was introduced to his Creeping Terror assistant director by, wait for it, Charles Manson. What shouldn't be mistaken for is probably being a credible motion picture director. And I should point out that his Vic Savage is credited as directing, producing, and editing the film, in addition to being cast in the lead as Sheriff Deputy Martin. Now, this is where, and this is the last bit, but I want us to know this. Nilsson's conman self-credited writer Robert Silliphant, and he was Robert's little brother, Alan, who came up with the original concept of The Creeping Terror. You should know that their other brother, Sterling, right, was a highly regarded TV writer in the era, best known for writing TV hits like Route 66, Night Gallery, and Perry Mason. 3 years later, he would win an Oscar for writing In the Heat of the Night. Nilsson used the Silliphant connection to sucker Hollywood investors to put money into a creature feature. Eventually, Alan left the production, realizing the film was rife with problems and could reflect badly on himself and his family. The picture was supposed to shoot in Lake Tahoe, but wait for it. To save money, y'all, Nilsson instead shot the film's pawn sequences on Charlie Manson's infamous Spawn Ranch in Todd's hometown right now of Simi Valley. So that's kind of fun. After not paying this monster special effects.
It's not really in Simi Valley. It's in West Hills. I don't know where, like, everybody attributes this shit to Simi Valley. It's West Hills.
map you look at in 1964, you could argue that. After not paying the monster special effects creator, the artist stole his creature costume the night before filming, but our con man that we've just talked about, Mr. Nilsson, he created a makeshift creature in the style of the purloined monster, and the cameras started to roll the next day. So this is who we're talking about, who is behind the camera. So be armed with that knowledge. This is what we're here to talk about, and it might explain a lot of what Francis is going to bring to the program and what the hell we are talking about. Let's bring Francis up.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frank Stokes. You can find in the comments a link to his comic book. Please go there and buy it. Frank Stokes.
Oh
my
hi.
gosh.
Oh,
I
he
also
has the
highly
same.
recommend.
He has the
this
same
collection.
thing. We have the
See,
same.
now Pliskin likes this. He wants to see too. It's good. It's good.
But I want to say, before we go any further, this movie is available to watch in its entirety in HD on YouTube. So you don't need.
Yeah, you don't have to get this until they take it down, and then you'll need this. You will.
Yeah. It's so funny. You were talking about like how some of the movies you've discussed are arguably not shitty. And I was like, Big Trouble in Little China, Big Trouble in Little China, like, because I know you guys did that. I like literally have the poster in my room. I was glad that you mentioned. To me, that is the top of the list of movies that should never have been
nice. Yeah, so good.
featured under the title. But it was a good show though. And I'm thanks for having me back, guys.
Thanks for coming back.
Thank you for being here, man. A great choice of movies.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. Everything she said about Vic Savage, the director, is true, and he disappeared shortly after the movie was finished.
Yeah.
So like no one actually knows. I think that they speculate that he died in the early 70s, but this movie was sort of like whatever he did was so shady that
I don't care about shady. I just want to go out and have people only be able to speculate on what decade in which I died.
Like what
right.
happened. Well,
could Vic Savage still be around? Like there's no evidence he's not.
I don't know.
Well, but again, if you're running afoul of like Mickey Cohen and stalking Mamie Van Doren and probably shot and killed Alfalfa from the Little Rascals, when you're not beating women,
and you're palling around with Charles Manson,
and you're Charles Manson say, "Hey, bro, who could totally be a first aid? Oh, did you need a location? Come to Spider."
So this guy was basically the 1950s Army Hammer. Is that what you're telling me?
If Army Hammer did more than just act, that's the thing. This guy was a triple threat.
Well, Tracy, it sounded like I might have misheard on the feed, but it sounded like you said he ate people.
He's not necessarily a cannibal. That would be Army Hammer.
I haven't heard that part.
But he
swindled them. That's the main thing.
He swindled them. He was a huckster, but he was smart enough to use like the brother's name to do this. And then the brother, of the real, Night Gallery and, Perry Mason, he was like, this is going to be a shit show. I'm taking my name off this. And he just kept going with it. And what's crazy is the only reason we have this film to talk about tonight is that I guess the biggest investor at the time, who was credited as the main producer. So when Mr. Savage, Nelson, whatever you want to call him, when he went missing, he took what was left of all the film reels. And then back in the day, you had sync sound, right? So part of the reason why you had this disconnected voice of somebody narrating what is happening in the movie, and you're like, why? And there's some dialogue where we can hear it and others where we can't, was because the film literally couldn't cut and it was missing footage. And so the reason you have this voiceover that sounds almost to my ears like when, because we grew up, we're all Gen Xers, and they were showing us like sex ed or driver's ed films from the 50s.
It's like a deranged educational film.
If Jimmy wore a seatbelt, he wouldn't be on blood asphalt. You're like, what?
Yeah.
So this feels a little bit of that.
But as Todd said, the guy also sounds bored.
He's so bored.
And the narration is fabulous. Like I wrote down a portion of it because it cracked me up so much. It's so awkward and stilted. Barney, naturally, was still dating all the girls in town. And he couldn't comprehend that married life brought with it not only new problems and duties,
Yeah.
but the necessary togetherness of husband and wife as well.
It's like literally, and then they play that voiceover plays over this scene where like the guy who's drinking the milk is like the single guy who's like, but we used to sleep with everyone together, and this guy's like, no, but I found my wife, and you're like, this is
I
like,
love that scene only because they start making out so hard and he just sadly
so
leaves.
awesome.
He's like,
And he's just sitting
why
there.
are they doing this?
It's like
I am
there are
still
all these
here.
sort of little subplots that they flirt with but don't do anything with. Like, why does a fight break out between like two guys fighting over a girl in the big climactic scene in the dance hall? Like, the monster's already eating people, but there's this argument happening in the back.
Frank, okay, I think you need to start us in on the narrative of this movie.
And by the way,
Take us
when
from the
Todd-
beginning.
when Todd uses the word narrative, I think we all know that aspiring narrative, perhaps.
That's pretty fair. As you said,
Every
it does feel
movie
in
has
some
a
ways
narrative.
I don't know that
Whether
like
it-
all together.
this
So,
one. I don't know.
So we're in a small town, and Vic Savage plays. Here he is with his sweetheart that he makes out with in front of his.
You guys,
friends.
this is a scam artist / killer / what happened.
Yeah. Is the local sheriff, I guess, or something like that. He's a local deputy.
He's the son of the sheriff, I think.
The son of the sheriff. Okay, yeah.
But you
And-
guys, like for those who haven't seen it, to properly do this justice, he's the son of a sheriff. This shot is the
Right.
establishing shot for the sheriff. It is used no less than 8 times in this film. The
Oh
same-
yeah, it's constantly used. He might also be the son-in-law of the sheriff. I can't remember. It's already
And it
been
looks more
too
like
long.
a school, to be honest.
does,
than a sheriff's
it
department.
Yeah.
It looks like
I
he went to
thought
the nearest
that
building and just took a quick.
I thought that same thing, that the sheriff's office was sharing with the local high school.
Yeah.
That's a great.
And so then I'm trying to remember what the first appearance of the alien, but basically this alien comes down and starts terrorizing
right.
kids.
There's
Yeah, and this is his spaceship, the alien spaceship. And the alien, I think, is supposed to kind of look like a giant slug with reptilian skin, but it actually looks like 6 guys, with a bedspread over them covered with leaves.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
thinking sleeping bag, but yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
probably
well, a really big sleeping bag, and then like
It's a bit. It's like a dual sleeping bag, and then another guy with another dual sleeping bag who holds onto the back of it. Yeah.
and then 2 of the leaf kind of like appendages are puppets, so that it does this in the front, and like has flippers in the front.
Yeah, they have.
It's an amazing design. Yeah.
like
Look,
this-
they were trying to do something. They weren't just like, oh, we'll put people in sleeping bags.
No, yeah.
but again,
They
this is the
chose
part-
to put people in sleeping bags with like pointy things. coming
but
out.
this is the part where we have to remember. That's why I wanted to set the table, because it's like they had a different creature and they didn't pay him, and then he's like,
Yeah.
"Fuck you, I'm gonna shit." So the creature
That's right, and he bailed. I remember reading
stole
that. Yeah.
this creature design, and this crazy pants lead actor / director / stalker / Mickey Cohen didn't pay his taxes, whatever.
Alfalfa stalker. Yeah.
Alfalfa murderer is like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this overnight, and so he made his own creature. So he probably did take like a duvet and a bedspread and a sleeping bag, and he did a
Yeah,
thing.
whatever he could sew together.
He just did it. This was not planned to be the creature. So when you do a creature film, and the night before the creature designer's like, "Bro, you didn't pay me," and then this is what you're like, "Not a problem. We're just gonna go." I'm like, the whole point of this is the creature. And can you
Yeah.
imagine this Scott? Oh, you know what? HR guy didn't deliver. I guess I'm gonna bring in some silly putty. I mean, that's what this is. I mean, so like, props to the producer.
Yeah, but the difference between then and now is very little. Like when like a shitty movie had no budget and was like, do special effects, a guy would get out of his sewing machine and a bunch of sleeping bags and try to make it work. And now what happens is people just turn to their keyboards and their mouses
And do the computer digital equivalent.
and they do an
Yeah.
equally shitty
like
job.
Yeah.
So
But that's part of what I love about this movie. And as we were saying beforehand, I love this movie even a little more, I think, than Plan 9, which is the most infamous bad movie of all, and
Ed
it
Wood,
has
Ed
Ed Wood elements, like you said, like that's very reminiscent of Bela Lugosi dying during filming, so he
Yeah.
just writes him out with a off-screen car
Yeah.
screech. It feels like that, you know, the quick, you know. But I feel when I watch this movie, like this is the Alien movie I would have made when I was 14 and wanted to be a filmmaker if I saw, you know, an Alien movie, if I saw the real movie Alien on TV and was like, I could do that, you know? And so this movie has a sort of, despite all of the stories behind the scenes, delightful sort of exuberance to it.
Well,
He's trying. He's trying.
oh, he's trying so hard. But
That's
let's,
what matters.
before we go too much further, tell us, when did you first hear about this film? When did you first see it? How
Sure.
old were you? Because it sounds, I love what you said, like I would have done this at 14. When did you see it?
The funny thing about that is fairly recently. I
Really?
watched movies like this on, you know, TV in you know, when I was growing up all the time. And I loved watching like cheesy B movies and staying up late at night, you know, to see the creature features and all that. But this movie eluded me. So what has happened is lately I have started playing movies in the background while I work as a way to, like, you know, kind of inspire me. And in particular, these kind of movies, and there are a ton of them. Just sitting there on YouTube for your enjoyment. There's one called The Beach Girls and the Monster, which kind of looks like if Russ Meyer directed one of these B sci-fi movies, which I might have chosen, but I've only ever watched with the sound off, so I don't actually know if it's even watchable. But it looks like a Russ Meyer movie. So like that's how I discovered this particular movie, was doing that. Like I would just create playlists of these cheesy movies just to have, like, for inspiration.
Gotcha. Okay. I was curious about that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Probably because it reminds me of when I was a kid watching these films.
oh,
you know?
absolutely. There's an innocence and earnestness despite apparently the murderous director. But like, so there's a spaceship that crashes, a monster gets on the loose. That's a straight enough narrative. We've got people in, you know, again, they're kind of like hipsters. I feel like I could probably go to Silver Lake right now and see the two. Looking exactly.
Especially the way Vic is directed, is dressed there. Looks pretty
right.
timeless.
I know. I was like, oh my God, I saw you at Spaceland. What's Misconnection? You know.
Did the ladies wear those kind of pantsuits in modern Silver Lake, or?
You know what? I think we're going back. I think some people are. I mean, it's crazy to me like that.
I feel like mom jeans are back. I don't know.
I mean, what she's wearing looks retro to me, and that is, the retro is very popular in Silver Lake. What he's wearing, you know, you can see anywhere, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But so then they're like, so we have a spaceship, and so we call in the U.S. Army. And what I appreciate about this, again, it's the hallmark of low budget. Nobody has a matching uniform because they can't afford them.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's so perfect.
It's like we'll just pile them up.
Yeah.
They don't match, but we're in the same U.S. Army.
Yeah.
I'm like, isn't it?
I just thought it was a United Nations coalition.
This is a threat that affects the world.
This is an outside. I mean, it's an alien force outside of all countries. So I felt like I felt like there were all countries represented here.
So back when we would do that, and had allies, but so
wait, what are you talking about?
I don't know. Apparently, we're at war with Greenland and Canada. I'm confused.
Canada's no good. Their donuts are garbage.
Yeah, them and their free healthcare. Anyway, so then and I love this scene where it's like, okay, we have Army investigating, and they seem to want to crawl under this because I don't know this is true, but it feels like they could get the door open, so they just crawl into a hole. There's clearly a hole, the door that should open, and they can't. So they're like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's fake it.
It's one of the best things about this movie is everybody sees this crawl space under this garbage ship, and they're like, I should go under it. Everybody does immediately.
Yeah, but also this is where we want to pay attention to. They had no money, so God bless them. So when they go into the spaceship, like, what does it look like? Well, it looks a lot like your pool room with some generators. But like, if you look really closely, it's like a sound design situation where you have to toggle things, and there's little, you know, kind of. But here's the problem.
spent on the guy who looks at these things.
Yeah.
There's a whole character, and you never hear him speak a word through the whole movie,
But-
but he's always looking at the instruments. And
Yeah.
he's like,
But-
and then the instruments go weird, and he fixes them.
But
It's great.
when you have instruments that look like this,
Mhm.
and you kind of have a
Yes.
monster that looks like this,
With no hands.
they can't toggle small things and they can't do this because we've seen how they can't even grab people. But so
Right.
couldn't operate the mechanism that they came to Earth in. I feel like that is such a specific choice of like, you guys, it looks like space. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like we didn't get to the moon until what, 68, 69, like around
They said it in the movie. It goes beyond what science can understand.
Which is hilarious because it does look like the
I know.
broadcasting studio, at the local,
Yeah, no,
newspaper.
it's like a Radio Shack, like in
Yeah.
music session. Again, this creature, he can't manipulate. But who knows? Maybe the original creature that wasn't paid for, that was stolen. Maybe they had hands. We don't know because we'll never
Yeah.
know. But like,
no, that motherfucker was stolen.
he's like, I'm taking
They
my
couldn't
creature.
get it back.
By the way, that should really be like, if we were going to do like a film nerd version of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'd be like, where's the original creature of the Creeping Terror? Like, I want to find that. Like, where?
Yeah.
Like, I would do that as a let's Amazing Race that nonsense.
A person
warehouse in
experiencing
Sylmar,
homelessness
looking
is
in
currently
prop,
sleeping.
drawers.
Totally, it's absolutely insane. So we're here, and then they do what I love about this is like they're going to do a reverse shot where these guys switch places. And with like random wanted signs, for all we know, the director has his own wanted,
Yeah,
picture.
no kidding. Yeah.
But there's this like, but then again, you have this disconnected voice, this narrator who comes in as like, well, they're really trying to look at what's going on, and there's an alien on the loose, and like, what? I mean, it's so exquisitely terrible. And then we go back,
And
to
the narrator is so like I said, it almost sounds like an alien talking.
Yeah.
Like watching the movie, it's at one point I came up with that's my hot take, is that the Creeping Terror is narrated by the alien. Because
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I took it. The narration I took as a network anchor reporting the facts. That's how I took.
okay,
That's why I assumed because everybody out there, if you're under a certain age, you don't understand that journalists used to just try to report facts.
right.
So I took this
Yeah.
narrator as old school journalist. I'm just doing what I have to do. I'm just reporting the facts.
But it's also, I have to say, with whatever efforts were made by said director, murderer, whatever, he's really into framing things behind bushes, and he's doing proscenium arches, and they don't have any money, so you have a lot of 4 and 5ers and 3ers, 1 shots, because he can't really do
Yeah.
whole coverage.
For the
So-
whole scene, yeah.
Yeah, so we got, again, the thing to remember, just because the making of this film is, again, I think really interesting. The producer who took it over is like, dude, I put in the lion's share of this money, and this is the era of drive-ins, and I have a lot of teenagers that are getting killed by people as they're making out, and that says drive-in to me. So he took what was left of the sync sound reports. He took what was left of the sound. He took what was left of the film, but it was missing scenes, and they never actually shot all the scenes that they wanted to. So he took these disparate pieces together with the director who went off the grid because hashtag Mickey Cohen's looking for him, right, or whatever. And so this producer, God bless the independent producer, is like, I'm going to cut this together. So he does, and he gets a sale, and he gets it into drive-in, so he starts to make money again. So the ridiculousness of this, but the narrator that we're all talking about, I think rightfully so, who seems like he's asleep at the switch. He's no Morgan Freeman, we'll say it that way. It's like Morgan can probably sell this movie well, and then it's like this is not that voiceover here. And so literally, like, he had to string the voiceover to connect the plot because they didn't have all the footage and they didn't have sound that they could
They
use.
didn't have all the sound. I mean, that's very clear.
This is
throughout the movie.
industrious that this producer kept it together and made a sale, and we can see it.
I'm so
Yeah.
grateful to that producer for doing that. Absolutely.
Right?
Homies
Yeah,
did
yeah.
make money in drive-ins because
He
it is
did.
entertaining.
Oh my God. Okay, we have PSY Lint Larry. I don't know how to pronounce that, but thank you for tuning in. The spaceship.
Silent Larry.
silent.
If he's silent, Larry, how is he talking right now?
Well, he's
Like,
typing. You know.
voice of
Look like they pile
Yeah.
a bunch of random war surplus electronics. They picked up a surplus stores in the valley, which pretty much describes most of the B movie. You are 100% correct.
Yeah.
That is so what we are watching here.
You get like chords, various chords,
Oh, and
CD
then-
radios, and you put them together.
Yeah.
The other thing about the sound of this movie that I love, aside from the narrator, is the soundtrack. You know, the
Yes.
soundtrack music is at times sensational. I was trying to describe what it sounded like. It sounded like they wanted a theremin, but they couldn't afford a theremin. So they had someone sort of hoarsely blowing on a recorder.
Yeah.
You know, I actually grabbed, because we have one. I was trying to try to recreate what the sound of the alien is like. And it was
Oh my God.
so like this would be like playing a recorder, like, but that's not what it sounds like. It's more like,
Oh, they're jug banding a recorder.
Oh my God.
yeah.
This
Look
is,
at that going on while the alien
by the way, you guys,
is
this is
gradually. Well, I mean, the alien kind of just walks like this, so it's
Yeah.
not like it's slow, but it's definitely not fast. It walks at the pace that like a person with a giant sleeping bag on them would walk. And so the victims see the alien and they're just frozen with fear, and they just sit there like, you know, and the camera will like gradually, usually it's a POV. Yeah, that's a great example of the shot. And they just sit there and wait for the alien to eat them. And the shots, the shots of the women being swallowed very slowly by the alien, like the whole movie looks so low budget, but then there's these masterful shots of ladies' legs flailing as they're being sucked up by the
Into the
90% of the budget was ladies' legs kicking.
What I love about the bikini model death in this movie is before it happens, she has total agency over the dude who's trying to make out with her.
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, she's like, "What the fuck is that?" And he doesn't care. He's
And
just
by
100%
the way-
boner.
By the way, as she sits there and he takes off stage left and never comes back, and so he just lets her get eaten because she can't move.
Yeah, but okay, yeah, but you paint it that way, but she pushes him off
Left her.
with her female agency, which was her choice, and he's like, "Okay, fuck off," and then she gets it because she can't get up. My only initial point was it was just like the fact that she had agency over a human man and
That's
could get him off of her when he was doing something she didn't want to do I'm 100% behind. And then she immediately turns around and can't get up when a dude in a sleeping bag is coming at her.
I know. It's unfortunate. It's like my
But it
problem.
happens to everybody. Once the monster approaches you, it happens to the old guy with the fishing with his son, you know, the like
Oh yeah, we'll get
kind
to
of like
that.
character actor.
They can't win.
There is a
No.
genre, but this is again a shameless plug. But we talk about many of these in Cinema Bizarre, but there's a whole subgenre of killer trees, and implicit in the killer tree genre is that people back into them because the truth is the trees can't outrun you. Much like the George Romero Zombie, right? It took Tom Savini directing 1990s remake, right, of Night of the Living Dead, where the barber now has like a short haircut and is like all rippled out because 90. And she's like, "You guys, we can outrun them." And I was like, I've been waiting for everybody in every zombie movie to say that forever, right? But in 90, they get that. But you have this whole subgenre of the trees, and then people lean into them, or in this one, they just fall down so they can be overcome by the guy in the blanket. But there's a certain, again, this goes back to this is 1964. Right. So
Because of Lord of the Rings that tree thing happened. So
but
Evil
also,
Dead is the only believable tree murder because there's no way that.
no, but that's also it's
It
funny.
came from all angles and-
am I the only one here who's seen The Guardian?
Yes, The Guardian. I recall that was
Friedkin's The Guardian.
well.
I mean, that's a tree
then-
murder.
Another Brides of Blood has a banana tree. It's a Filipino horror film, and there's literally the lead actress in Brides of Blood is a former burlesque lady whose name was really Beverly Powers, but she went by Beverly Hills, and she's burlesque and a topless. And so she's the hot blonde in like the Filipino horror film that's been shipped in from America. She started at the Tropicana as a teenager and then moved on, and she literally backs into the most phallic looking banana tree you've ever seen. And I swear to God, Sam Raimi saw Rise of Blood as like Evil Dead tree rape. I mean, I'm not endorsing any. I'm saying I can draw a direct line between. Okay, so this is also another killer sort of slug plant situation that overtakes people who are just like, I guess I should just lay down and get eaten. And you're like, I don't. It's so bizarre, but that's this monster. I mean, that's the setup. And again,
it absolutely is. I think there's also, though, there's one thing that, like, the magic of the death scenes in this film, of which there are many, like the woman who's doing the clothesline while her baby's inside, is that the sort of glacial slowness which the alien approaches. But that could, I'm not saying that the director was competent, but that could be the producer trying to stretch this to feature length because there was so much footage missing. So, like, he took every frame of the death scene and just let it all play. Like, it's like no edits at all. Where you could probably edit a slightly more exciting scene that would be much less entertaining.
But this is also a trope that, I mean, those of us who love horror films, and all three of us do, right? Where it's like the girl's running like crazy, and the killer is slow walking, and he's right on her, and you're like, I don't like. It's like the longest walk in cinema history. It's one of my all-time favorite films. Right?
Why did that stick? I mean, it started with stuff like this back then.
No, but
it's stuck. It's stuck into the 80s. It's stuck as a thing. There's something it's because of dreams. I'm telling you right now. But it's because we all have dreams where we can't get out, we can't move away quick enough.
But what Francis is saying is a filmic technique that I think that I was going to say the longest walk in cinema history for me is Laurie Strode crossing the street. Dun, 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 and she's like, dun, dun, dun. She's walking, and then he's there with the sting hit, and then she runs back. Tommy, open the door. Tommy, open the door. He's like, boom, 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 boom. Bubble, right? But that, like, we've all been to that street if we live in LA. It's in West Hollywood. That's like 3 Teslas lined up if they're not on fire, and that's all it has to be. But yet it's like a 5-minute sequence, but bubble, bubble, because there's something about the woman who's in peril and then the menace that's coming. And I think what we're seeing here, I think to both of your points, is here we have like this monster is absolutely ridiculous because someone didn't pay the creature maker. So he's like, here's my sleeping bag. And like they're just leaning into it. And this is the
and not to get too film nerdy, but I mean that is exactly what Carpenter was trying to do because his inspiration was The Thing from Another Planet.
Correct.
Which Laurie Strode was watching at one point, and which of course he went and remade.
And then
he wanted to make an alien stalking. They called it The Shape or something. What did they call it?
The Shape.
Like she's not even supposed to be human.
Yeah, but there's something inherent about the nightmare. I think it's what Todd was getting to, right? It's like it's in dreams. It's this thing. It's very scary, and I think this film it doesn't have a lot of money, and it certainly doesn't have like maybe a Kubrick behind the lens, but it's trying to do these tropes, and I kind of have a love for that.
In a weird way, Tracy, because you have explained the backstory of the making of this movie and the filmmakers being the worst possible human beings on the planet.
Well, I don't know.
it holds a place that, like, for me, that Dimension movies hold.
Oh,
now,
okay.
It's these like movies made by garbage people, which are actual garbage. Which also I find very alluring. I don't know what to do with that as a human.
I think a lot of these B movies from the 50s had real like characters behind them. Is it Al Adamson who ended up getting killed by his contractor and buried under the concrete in his backyard? One of these directors died that way.
Yes, there's a documentary about that. It was on Shudder. Yes.
I think it's Al Adamson. I don't know how to say his name. Adam's son is what
you are correct. There's also another taboo. I mean, Todd and I talk about it a lot on the show because we really love R-rated horror and we're like PG-13 anyway. For the most part, there are exceptions, but mostly. And what I like about this film, again, we're at 64 Grindhouse drive-in, audience. They have like a baby who's very like, I don't know, crying.
Oh my God, this scene was horrifying.
And there's the woman who, of course, because all women in this movie are either homemaker. They're a homemaker, so they wear aprons and they cook.
Or the
things.
girls making out on blankets.
Yeah,
It
no,
was, and I don't mean it was horrifying in a movie level.
or horror is trying to be wise. That's the spectrum. It's a horror
Yeah.
Madonna in a grindhouse movie, right? There's that much range for ladies, but here
Yep.
she's, because she's a wife and she's a mom, so of course she's doing like laundry, and she sees like this thing moving, and then they go right to like the grandfather and the grandson who are fishing, and they see this thing moving, and you see this like crawling thing, and people just do this, and there's all these reaction shots, and then again the grandfather who lays down so he can be eaten, but
Yep.
the close up, I'm looking at like hoses and
Yeah.
like whatever they could find, and again I'm like, there's no shame in that. Like your monster was taken, so you're like, you know what, I have some pool hoses and some stuff, and this is gonna be, and if we just put a flashlight on it, maybe no one will notice if we hold on it for 2 seconds, and then we
Yeah.
so they're trying.
I love that sequence.
Maybe those hoses are
Especially.
the things that can control the dials, and
but how? Look at the ends. These are
and
good.
they sort of flop around. But if they were prehensile, I don't know.
I love that sequence where Grandpa is screaming after his son for so long, and there's
Yeah.
so many shots of just them like forcing themselves as humans into brush to scream terror. I think this is a great sequence in low budge filmmaking.
Here we go. Musical accompaniment. There it is. It's
Yeah, that's it'd be like
it's like. By the way, this is the first live instrumental reenactment.
performance of a
We don't. Frank, are you available to do the show every week and just do like recorder sting?
That would be amazing.
Yeah, right. I'll just be this like the Paul Schaefer of my favorite shitty movie.
Oh my God, we should
That's
be
the
so
only
lucky.
instrument
We
that
should
I
be
play.
so lucky.
And we'll look over at you and like point at you, and you'll be like,
Hey man, we're all Gen X.
That's
we're
an
all
old
forced-
reference. What should I
we-
say?
we were-
Who's actually doing that nowadays? I don't even know.
We were all forced to learn recorder for no reason in the state of California growing up. I don't
Yeah.
know about y'all, but like
We had to do it in Massachusetts too. I think it was
We did it
nationwide.
in Illinois.
oh my God. Creature designed by Joe's Reindeer Shopping Collection with Colleen's Bread Spreads. You know what? That is one of the best. That is brilliant. That's a great line, actually. But then I also love that we are in 1964, so you have a little bit of the split, right? Of like Eisenhower straight edge, haircuts,
Mhm.
but then also like the cool new frontier post Kennedy. This guy is like wanting to be
Yeah.
John Nash so hard, even though he's like a killer. Apparently, look at him; he's out of control.
And
But
Vic Savage straddles that line, like he tries to sort of be Brando-esque when he's
Oh,
not
yeah.
in uniform. Yeah.
But he doesn't try maybe hard enough. That we could talk about the performance, but then we see like again more teenagers who are just hanging out. We get a lot of the creature point of view. I love that.
I love that scene with the guitar. Yeah.
This guy with the hippie with the guitar who
Yeah.
is like trying to bash our creature, and then we immediately cut back to, oh no, the guitar looks really screwed up, and like.
Mhm.
Like, it's so like, oh my God, Dinah row your boat ashore. Like, what is And so then we go back to the same setting where now we have like again 4 people in one shot because we don't have time to do all coverage
Mhm.
on winners on each one. And if you're not really giving a performance, why would you bother? So then we go to the great scene where everyone's
Oh
doing.
my God.
Can we
Yeah.
please talk to us about how brilliant the
Yeah,
dance?
this is sort of like the set piece moment, which I say, equally
Yeah.
sincerely and sarcastically in the movie. And it's absolutely amazing. It's all these, not just teenagers. I mean, the teenagers are dancing. They're doing like the twist. Everybody's dancing is doing the twist. And then there's like just middle-aged people sitting at tables. And as I mentioned before, there's this fight that breaks out that seems like a subplot. We're supposed to know what's going on, but we really don't. Where a woman it's interesting because they're cutting to all the party goers, and then this woman sitting here very sullenly. And I remember the shot goes on long enough where I'm like, that's weird. It almost looks like she's not in character. And then she like slams down her drink and says, I've had enough. Look at that guy over there. And she gets up to leave. And then the monster appears. So it's like, okay, the scene is starting, and everybody's looking at the monster, and a woman screams, oh my God, what is it? That's probably a pretty accurate.
That was a great
delivery of
line
how-
That was a perfect line.
It's not an unreasonable question.
Yeah, no,
What
it's
is it?
absolutely fair
scene-
question.
The scene that you're talking about, I want to hold this still up because one of the things I love about this movie, because no one thought anyone was going to do a still frame ever or maybe even see it. You can see the light hitting the wire holding up. Like if you look to the screen,
Oh yeah.
right. This is the wire
Oh,
that is holding it up, catching the light.
nice.
With-
That's great. That
It
is absolutely the least of this film's problems, but that is a.
But it's like they're
There
like,
you go.
to try to get this, like, we're going to shoot up, hold it. And there's, again, the joy of just like, we've got this.
It's like finding a minimal problem with the Trump administration. It's like, yeah.
right.
You guys, this is the type
Because
of
the big problem, the obvious problem with this scene is the reaction of an entire room full of partygoers, which is that they sort of they react as if somebody who owns the dance hall came in and said, "All right, we're closed now.
Yeah.
So would you guys, you can stay, like no more dancing. Let's everybody,
Let everybody out.
You don't have to stay. What is it? You don't have to go home, but you can't.
Yeah, you don't.
Because they
Yeah,
kinda
you don't have
just
to go home, but you can't stay
like,
here.
calmly, quietly walk away from the monster as he starts eating them,
Yeah.
one by one. And then
Slowly.
the scene that I referred to
He
earlier
eats
continues,
them
where the two
slowly.
guys fighting over that girl.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a hoot. And then we get to this shot, which I kind of love. 'cause
Oh
you-
yeah.
This punk rock guy with like the cool like grease lightning car, and then the creature who is like obviously a
Does it
guy.
say hot rod, shot rod? What is it supposed to say in the side of the car?
I think it's a
I think it's
shit rod. Shit rod.
But he has like a skull and crossbones and like some
Yeah.
Vertigo sign. I mean, I don't know. He's probably the Zodiac killer for all we know.
Yeah.
But like this bizarre
Someone took a full 6 minutes to decorate that car.
Except, but like it's also what this scene. It's hard to see in just a still, but if you guys watch this, it's uncomfortable because before he flips the car over, the creature does look like he's trying to have sex with the car, and you're like, I don't know what's happening. Like he's doing and it's very awkward. The poor actor or actors who are playing the sleeping bag killer monster.
But that's
Like-
completely normal in their world. That's how they drive cars.
Yeah, but it's like he usually eats people, and now he's trying to eat a car that has like a skull and crossbones on it. It looks like Bowser from Sha Na Na, basically. I don't know what's going on there. Then we come back, and now we're with like Eisenhower era hairdo guy, like again matching army outfits. And so then my favorite is they all get in a line and start to shoot at the creature. And I'm pretty sure this is not a safe formation. I think
Yeah.
my Marine friends would not endorse shooting guns like this. I'm pretty sure that's not how it's done. But what I love about this, and I'll try to do this in rapid fire so we can approximate the edits on this film. Oh my God, there's a bunch of guys with guns in a line. Oh my God, it's point of view and it's a blur. Oh my gosh. And now he's swollen. He's eating
almost all of them. Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah.
And now the bedspread has grown. Like you can
Yes.
kind of see right here that's what they're doing. So that's fun.
It's an
and then-
amazing scene because they really do
like before
stand there
you
shooting the gun, waiting for it to envelop them.
That's correct. And then you've got this guy crawling away because they're trying to. I think the filmmaker's trying to give you scale and timing.
So,
He's
yeah.
away, so you're like, okay, it's possible. I mean,
I love that you think that the filmmakers are trying to give you anything.
one hopes we must, imagine Prometheus happy.
I want to just interject really fast that my favorite parts of this movie are not the sleeping bag killings, and Frank said to me before the show, which we've said a bunch of times, it looks like a sleeping bag that people are getting sucked into. And I totally agree with that.
Yes.
But and these scenes to me are great. I love them. But the ones that really worked for me when I was watching it this time were the ones where people had, and they went on for minutes, several minutes, where people are having conversations and they get the coverage of the people having conversations, but then there's a narrative happening over the conversation telling you what's happening in the conversation.
Yeah.
And
that was the things where they didn't apparently record sound properly. And so
it's most of the movie. It's most of the movie. Every time there's expository dialogues. Yeah. So
Explaining
I have,
what they're saying as they're saying it. It's absolutely fabulous.
yeah, I have a clip of that
Oh.
very thing. Here's a clip of that stuff.
Within 48 hours, Dr. Bradford had closely examined the creature and the spaceship and reached a number of conclusions. He was sure the creature had come from somewhere beyond our solar system because it adapted to our environment so quickly. And no planet or dead star near us has conditions similar to the Earth. Of special interest to him was the hull of the ship. It was composed of an alloy unlike anything human science had ever encountered. The doctor had run a number of tests on the metal, but its molecular structure remained a mystery. Because there was no food on board, Bradford could presume that the creature had been in a state of suspended animation, particularly because it had survived the trials of re-entry and impact without apparent harm. So far, he had no success in communicating with it, but he had not yet exhausted all possibilities. On a more subjective basis, he had the curious feeling that the creature did not want to communicate with him. Such a confession on the part of this eminent scientist made Martin feel quite apprehensive.
Oh my God.
That's perfect.
What?
Yeah.
Might be one of the most accurate Anderson family player moments
It's definitely,
That's great.
whether or not it's good is beside the point.
No, it's in the spirit.
It's accurate.
It is. That is
Very
fantastic.
much so.
Oh my God. I was going to hear the sound equipment sank in the lake. Can artists do that? Oh my God. I love it. Yes. This is such a special movie. I just love that you brought it to us. I mean, the film rapidly has to end because I think they ran out of footage and the producer's like, I just got to sell this to a drive-in. So like the stakes are a little lower back in the day.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's tailor made for that. You know, it deserved that fate.
But like when they have their friend who's like a burn victim out of he crawls in and he crawls out. We don't understand why the pool equipment exploded, but like it's really bad. And then there's like a shootout and the creature maybe dies. And then there's the oh no, and the girl has to hide in his shoulder. And
Oh, no.
I don't know.
And it
like,
ends with the dire sort of thing where he says, maybe when the alien they weren't able to stop the message being sent back to the home planet that humans are delicious or whatever it is, and that maybe by the time the aliens arrive, humanity will have found a way to stop them. And then the camera tilts up to the sky for the last shot, which is actually great.
which is great because they're like more of them are coming, maybe. You know?
Yeah.
And it just was a happy accident because the cameraman had actually passed out and he fell down.
It's like the end of The Graduate. It was never intended to be that, but then it looked so good in the editing room. And in fact, the cameraman was just like, oh God, my career's over.
Oh, Jesus.
And I wanted to, because the narration thing, so I wanted to read this to get my facts right. Because of the sync sound being kind of eaten up and the sound was badly done the first time out, the film is largely narrated by a disconnected voice, which we've talked about, right? Which means the audience is left watching foolish characters, right? Walk around in scenes as the narrator tells us what they are saying to each other as characters' lips can be seen moving, and at other times telling us what the characters are thinking. A fun factoid, Nelson, our favorite director, hired Larry Burrell, a local radio news anchor, to narrate the story in his best effort to cheaply cover for his lack of audio and inability to afford dubbing. Mr. Burrell has additional film credits to his name with the titles like Not Tonight, Henry, and They Saved Hitler's Brain. So this guy,
that's also in this collection.
that's right.
It's right here. Both versions. There's two versions of that movie. By the way.
So like these guys kind of had people on speed dial back then, and like have these folks working together. But again, the thing that's wonderful about this movie is that you have clearly an insane director, at least a criminal, if not insane. And you've got a producer who's like, I will get my money back. And, even when the director went missing, a producer put all that he could find together of what's left of the filmic elements, hired this guy to do a narration so they could at least have a cut through, right? That's why it's barely over an hour. And he sold it and he got his money back. And he was very proud of that. And part of it, which he should be, all producers who actually get paid for their work, what would that be like? And get their money back for their investors. Great. But here he is. He's made this film that is so deliciously bad / wonderful. It's it's so out there. We're all talking about it. You know, in 1964, this comes out, and we're still here talking about it, celebrating about it. You know, the publishers of this book were like, we should celebrate this book or celebrate this film. You know, it's like Francis found it. It was like, let's do this. There's something, if you love film, if you love independent spirit, if you love artists that are like, you know what, let's just put on a show. That whole ethos is this nonsense.
Even if criminals themselves, are making a movie, it's kind of hard if they're doing it with 100% of their energy and they're putting all their shit into making this shitty movie so they can make good with their mafia investors. It's hard not to like that because it's attempting to make art. It's not art. It's not art. It's an attempt at art. I mean, maybe just an attempt at art is art itself. So I think that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that part of the appeal of B movies is that they were all made, you know, on a shoestring, and many of them without artistic intention, but some of them just turn out to be really great, either really entertaining or genuinely good, like a movie like Detour. You know, which was, you know, part of the Poverty Row film noir movies that's now really celebrated down on a shoestring. Very special movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it's inspiring, especially to, you know, filmmakers and film creators, and that's probably part of why they've had a life.
There's an ethos to that. I mean, like we were talking about, you know, we also talked about the original Don Siegel directed 1956 Invasion of the Body Snatchers in Cinema Bizarro. And that was another chapter I'd written about. And what I love about that movie was it was a very independent movie. It was very low budget. Depending on who you talk to, it's about $340,000 to $416,000 budget. Shot in largely Santa Mira, the Bronson Caves, etc. Very LA, Los Feliz, like great LA locations, time capsule. But also the producer of that, Walter Wanger, he was married to a pretty sexy actress and felt that her agent was getting fresh with her. So he wound up shooting said agent and went to prison. And it was through his being arrested for shooting a human being in prison that he all of a sudden was like, wow, we really need to do social impact films. So he came out of prison and he was very concerned. Again, this, you know, Body Snatchers comes out in 56, and you know, we post HUAC, post the communist threat, McCarthy era, all that good stuff. He was really concerned about basically everyone conforming to really bad leaders, and what does that look like? So he takes Jack Finney's 1964 novel, buys the rights, and does a very cheap, low budget independent film in 56. So here's this film that comes out, you know, like 8 years or whatever later. But like Siegel had almost no money, and what he achieves with Pods and the little soap dish with the bubbles, right? In 1956 is like profound. We're still talking about it. The pacing on that is like this. You've got a woman with agency. They're all sexy as can be. And then there's the Grindhouse version, which we're talking about tonight. And 8 years later.
Which tries to achieve a similarly sort of bleak ending where you're like, oh no, yeah.
And I have no doubt this film was inspired by, because Siegel's film made $3 million back in 56, which was like, hi, when you're paying 25 cents a ticket, hi, you know? So that's an independent film, not a studio picture, even at its day, as Allied artists, right? So you had these guys who were, you know, Don Siegel obviously would go on and do big films.
He's a master. Yeah.
Teach, you know, Clint Eastwood how to direct and Dirty Harry and all the rest of it. But like this guy was not, Mr. Nelson is not that person, but he was inspired by the ethos of those films, which I think if you love film to whatever degree they had money or talent, you know, that's up to the beholder. And I think Todd's right. Like, is it art? It's not art. I don't know. I mean, Warhol silkscreen, is that art? I don't know. Shepard Fairey took an AP photo and colored it and he's Obama's poster. Is that art? I don't know. He was sued. But like, we can all debate that as artists. But the truth is, if there are images that are indelible, if there are films that you can't get out of your head, that's what's special about this medium. And I would argue this film, is clunky and ridiculous as it is with the backstory. When you know the backstory, it's even more like, oh my God. Yeah. But we're talking about it. And, you know, try being relevant. How much?
Well, and certainly if you consider this movie, as a 10, 11-year-old, with equally young sibling watching it on Channel 56 on a Sunday afternoon as part of the Creature double feature, it does what it does to you. and I'm, I'm only going off of
It achieves
vague
its goal in
memory.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
But
I'm
also,
only going off of vague memory, but I'm pretty sure my brother, my sister, and I all had fun watching this dumb movie.
right.
Yeah.
And then it was why the one that came after it was more disturbing,
Yeah.
which is good. I mean, I think that's good. They call this thing for kids like who like horror movies, like gateway horror. So this is a gateway horror movie. If you think it's funny and fun, then maybe try something a little bit harder.
But
That's all.
also, I mean, I'm looking at my amazing partner over here, who's wearing his Camp Crystal sweatshirt, which is super cute on him. And, it's like, "Brr." But like the tropes that film traffics in, because Sean Cunningham, who directed that, grew up watching these kinds of movies, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you've got young teens making out, having sex, doing the thing, and then you get killed, all this kind of stuff. Like, it's like our generation, or what we grew up with as, young kids. The filmmakers who probably did it for us, Wes Craven, Sean Cunningham, John Carpenter, Jim Cameron, to a degree, like they all grew up watching these films. So if you like the films we grew up with, which is why I love that you brought this to us tonight, it's like, this is a film that was infamous, that was known, that was talked about, I think in large part because when you're closer to 1964, the infamy of this director, and also his wife, who he beat the hell out of, wrote a tell-all book, and that was being published because she's like, well, he didn't pay me, so she told all. So if you really want to know more about this sordid, really sad tale, I'm surprised that Ryan Murphy hasn't done some really mediocre version of it. But like the true life version,
Yeah, because he could cast a Charlie Manson and everything. Yeah,
absolutely. But the idea that Charlie Manson's like, dude, this guy could be your first AD. He's like, okay. He's like, I can't afford Tahoe. And Charlie's like, you can shoot here. Like, this is happening, you people. It's like, what? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like the girls from Spawn Ranch are like 500 feet off camera.
Yeah.
As the guy in the duvet / sleeping bag was like, well, I guess I have to be here because my director didn't pay his creature guy. Like, there's so much cray going on, but the idea that someone who maybe killed one of the three little rascals is working with Charlie Manson for a location, like, there's so much weirdness woven into this storyline. I just feel like
I agree, but I also I like 100% am behind your theory that this influenced Gen X
people,
80s horror. I think that's such a good point. I think The Creeping Terror is 100% Jason.
Yeah.
Maybe not Freddy, but like definitely Michael, Jason, Leatherface, all that. They're not that fast.
Right. No. Yeah.
There's so many movies. I mean, in the early Night of the Living Dead came around the same time as this.
Yeah.
But
and Attack of the Killer Shrews and a lot of these.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah. Like the slow moving monster is a thing.
It's a thing, and also
it can be used well. The Creeping Terror is not. Friday the 13th is a great franchise to look at for where it works and where it doesn't. It's
The Thing from Another Planet is an example of a slow moving.
Yeah, for sure.
But also, I want to answer the question. I'm sorry, JSL1585OB. It's hard to say, so work with me. There is a 2014 indie film called The Creep Behind the Camera that you can also find online, and it's actually an indie movie about the making of this movie.
Like a narrative film.
The narrative of like how to do. So check that out, and then if you go to Wikipedia, God help us all, go to the Creeping Terror of Wikipedia. They will talk to you. There's a line about the name of the wife, who I should know and I don't, to this guy, and she wrote a tell-all book, and so you can find the book about her. It's her whole relationship with him, and he's crazy. So seek it out if you want.
And your book, Tracy.
And my book, I just want to say, cinema. By the way, if you guys are watching my favorite shitty movie, I promise you everything we talk about in here should be on our show. And I would say anyone who's watching this, if you buy this book and you find a title in this book that you like, come on our show. We have fans.
Yeah,
We have
absolutely.
want people who are
And buy this book as well.
You need to buy Todd's
Murder Valley.
He actually wrote a whole novel, you guys. I'm just doing 5 chapters. Like, let's be really fucking clear, okay?
Frank's got a comic book, god damn it.
Frank, please talk to us about your comic book.
Sure. Yeah, so we did a Kickstarter. So I went to Comic-Con, met an artist. I wanted to get into comic books. I'm a fan of comic books. I was focused on screenwriting, but reading all these comics. And so I went there looking for someone to collaborate with. And she's an amazing artist. Her name is Andrea Daly. Have been working on this for a couple of years. And we just did a Kickstarter campaign. There's something kind of very exciting happening with comics on Kickstarter, where it's become there's a big community of people who go there for comics instead of like your traditional places, and to the point where even like major publishers are starting to do Kickstarter campaigns for comics now. That's the website for our address. Wicked Town Studios is the partnership between me and Andrea, and our first comic, our flagship comic, is called Wicked Town. It's about a set in the 1970s, and a suburban housewife joins a local bridge club and begins to think that they're a coven of witches. So that's what it's about. The first issue is.
I love that it comes through a bridge club.
Yeah, which my mom was in a bridge club, so that was to me like the most like 70s housewife thing you could do. I think a lot of my ideas of
that's what my nana was playing all the time.
You know?
Bridge. You're going out to play bridge with the ladies.
By the way, I love that as a setup. One of my favorite. It's almost an aside, but I think it's so clever. 1978, Foul Play, the great Goldie Hawn, Chevy Chase's first movie. Todd and I are kind of like a campaign of 2, I guess, where we're like, why are Goldie Hawn's films not on Blu-ray?
No, seriously. Why they're not available.
But there's an aside in Foul Play where Goldie Hawn's character, Gloria Munday, the librarian, because, Goldie Hawn, librarian, obviously. And she gets kidnapped by Whitey Johnson and the dwarf, #canceled. And she breaks out, and it's raining. And, of course, it's raining, and she's Goldie Hawn, and it's 78, so she's in white because it's wet. And she's crawling out, and she's trying to get these 2 old ladies' attention to get her out. Like, open the window, girls, let me in. And there's these 2, like, looking like grandma ladies playing Scrabble. And what's amazing, because only in 1978 could this happen, it should be like Goldie Hawn can't get their attention, but instead it's 78, Colin Higgins goes in, right? And it's literally like, motherfucker. Oh, I don't think that's with a U. I think it's with, and there's a whole scene where they're arguing about how to spell motherfucker.
How to spell.
As Goldie has her like leg doing this, and she's like, and it's like, okay, and then it's
that's
like
hysterical.
Precise.
That's like the lady in Airplane. I speak jive.
I speak which is June Allison.
Yes,
like,
of course. Yes.
What?
Yeah, not just any lady. Yes, yeah.
But it's just like, but there were these moments where it's okay. Don't be offended by everything. And we're Gen Xers, we can do this easily. But to have that kind of a moment. But I think to your point, though, it's, again, I think, and I just want to step, I mean, I know Todd will back me up on this, but genre films get a really bad rap. It's like there's porn and there's horror, and I don't like that, because I mean, look, porn's fine. That's your thing.
Because porn is clearly better than horror.
Well,
I mean, the production.
Depending on who's starring, I'm just saying Aquaman 2 exists, and I won't complete that sentence. I'm just saying, like, I think we need to stop doing this, because what I like about horror, for me, again, Gen X point of view, so I'm like an old broad now, but as a young person back in the day, talking to my partner with this Camp Crystal Lake t-shirt, from my eyes, with a very feminist mom who's like, I don't like you watching TV. You can watch Bionic Woman, $6 Million Man, Wonder Woman, later Cagney and Lacey, China Beach, are we seeing a pattern? But she let me watch any movies I wanted.
And strong female leads, yeah.
But you know what? When people talk about The Final Girl, some folks have a lot to say, but I go back to the great Jamie Lee Curtis, who was very wise, and on the Halloween 25th anniversary DVD, which I know we all own, she has her audio commentary, and she's like, "Here's the thing: someone gave me a lot of people gave me a lot of shit because I was Janet Leigh's, kid and Tony Curtis's kid, and I came out. I mean, when your first appearance is Halloween, and you followed up with Terror Train, Halloween 2, Road Games,
Prom
9."
Yeah.
Right, all within 5 years, she was the thing, and she's like, "Here's the thing: in all those films, I survived. I was smart, and I had agency, and I vanquished the bad guy. And when I finally got paid, it was in Trading Places, where I was cast as a
Right.
whore, and I was topless.
Yeah.
I was never naked in the exploitation films, but when Paramount brought me in, she's like, and look, if you have her body, you should probably be naked. I'm just saying. But
Well, I mean, it's just a number. I mean, it's a numbers game, Tracy.
who's exploiting
Tracy, it's numbers. It's numbers, right? I mean, the reason why they were willing to pay her to show her tits in that movie is because for so long she was in B movies where people expected to see her tits and they did not
and
get
they
to.
did not. But here's the thing, and I would say reverse that, because I'm that Gen X girl, so we'll do the thing. But so when Halle Berry manages to win an Oscar for Monsters Ball, her follow-up paycheck was
$250 a boob for Swordfish. Yeah.
$250 and $250 a boob, so $500K to be topless with Swordfish. And I'm like, again, you beautiful ladies do what you want to do, but the difference is that studios are paying you a lot of money to exploit you. So when people come at me as I'm a feminist and I'm a woman and I like the final girl, I'm like, my Ripley's not exploited. Laurie Strode's not exploited. Pam Grier paved the way. They own their
Pam Grier was very exploited in her early movie.
but she owns it as she's topless and beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I'm not saying it's bad.
But there's something about the genre films where people want to look down on them. And my thing is, my girls have agency, topless or not, in genre films. What they don't have agency in is Paramount Trading Places. What they don't have agency in is Halle Berry going, I guess, whatever, $500,000 after I won an Oscar. So, I just need everyone to sit down
and those
on our horror films.
I would give a lot of credit to Jamie Lee Curtis for that, though, because I think that's a shift. I mean, if you look at the movies from the era that Creeping Terror came from, there aren't a whole lot of women with agency. There certainly aren't a whole lot of women vanquishing villains or monsters. But that became the norm in the 70s. I mean, the girl from Trading Places, the girl from Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Marilyn Burns,
maybe the original final girl, and she
Marilyn Burns,
but Laurie Strode, I think, is the first time you have a strong. I would argue, even in Trading Places, Jamie Lee Curtis elevates that role, which is, as you said, kind of a Hollywood hooker. Yeah.
She does. She's very good.
By the way, also, in case anyone questions the brilliance of Jamie Lee Curtis, look no further than A Fish Called Wanda with that comedic timing. And the best thing about True Lies, my least favorite Jim Cameron film, which is saying a lot because I saw Avatar, is Jamie Lee Curtis in Trading Places, where I'm just like, you're doing the exploitation and the agency in the same time. And she apparently, from what I've read, she designed the dance, because Cameron didn't ask her to do that. Jamie Lee said, I have an idea. And she's Jamie Lee in 1990, whatever, 2 it was, or what. And he's like, you should totally do that, because, and she's doing it with an ownership and an agency, because Cameron, for all of his sins, and I've worked for one of his wives, he writes some of the best female characters I've ever seen in cinema. And so I love that about Jamie Lee. But I just think, though, that, and I'm so happy you brought this film, because
that's a great point. Did Laurie Strode come first, or did Ripley?
Laurie Strode is a year earlier. Alien comes out in '79. Halloween.
Because Alien, he was trying to make Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was his inspiration, I remember. But so he made it kind of in space.
The pitch for Alien, because ironically, Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon, they had written a script, and Corman wanted to do it as like a Corman movie, and it was a little better than the typical Corman movie. And so the agent of one of those gentlemen sent it out. And because Star Wars had come out in 77, Alan Ladd Jr., who was running Fox, was like, I need another space story. And so what was great about the Alien idea was when it got to Fox, they said, well, it has the horror elements of The Exorcist, which was only 5-6 years before, with the shark of Jaws 75. And they were like, okay, we're going to do that. And then the setting was Star Wars. So Alan was like,
Yeah.
I got Star Wars, I got Jaws, and I got The Exorcist. And that's the unholy trinity that was used to sell Fox on a really what should have been Corman-esque situation. And then the good news is about 10 directors passed on Alien, and they got to Ridley Scott, who was like, I did the do list. I'm so special. And then Scott said, I think my Alien should look like H.R. Geiger's Necronomicon. Right. And so they already had the Alien, and then they adapted it, and then they worked because Scott can draw and do his thing. And that's why, Alien worked. But they were building on it, which is why I want to go back to, Francis, you bringing The Creeping Terror. This film is, whatever you think of it, it's easy to bash it. So many filmmakers quote this film, reference this film, and it's really... like we've talked about, it's a foundational
Let's do Tracy,
Absolutely.
let's do last final thoughts on The Creeping Terror so we can get into our final
I'm
segment.
good. I'm so good. Francis, take
Frank, what do you have to say about this?
I
Finally,
think when I originally chose this movie, it was partly because it's just fun. We're living in such fucked up times right now, and watching a B sci-fi movie from the classic era of it is a piece of escapism that I recommend right now. So at least part of your day can be a little less dark.
I agree. I think that's a great way to put it. I also think that, all of us can like to feel intellectually superior to other things. And it's easy to feel that way about this movie and still be entertained at the same time. So I would recommend it on that level. Certainly for me. I love it. Let's do this segment, Be Bad or Be Best. And this is, Frank, we're going to present to you a couple of titles of movies, and you judge whether they're so bad nobody should see them, or they're so bad they're the best.
Or Be Bad. Okay, which is like you should actually,
yeah.
even if I haven't seen that.
Yes.
Yeah, you can judge it only on the poster art, only
Right.
on the people who you might know who are in it. You want me to go first, Tracy?
Make it so.
All right, here I'm going with this straight-to-video movie that has aliens who invade the Earth like The Creeping Terror. It's called Evil Aliens.
That looks fabulous.
Frank, have you
Yes.
heard of this film? And
No.
what's your judgment? No, you
John,
have
tell
not.
Tell me what year it came out.
I don't know. Like, I don't have all that information. Like 2003
Oh,
or something. It's a low probably mid-budget, but a mid-budget movie that has too much on its mind.
I'm gonna
it's-
say probably Be Bad then. Like based on
Okay.
that cover, if it was like from the 80s, then it might be like an undiscovered gem.
And most of these, I would agree with you, and I'll accept your judgment. But at the same time, I've seen this movie. I obviously own a copy of it. It's not as horrible as you expect. There's a couple of these. There's movies like The Rig. There's another movie where it takes place in a supermarket with aliens. There's a bunch of these straight to video movies that
That sounds
sneak
fun.
through.
That one.
Yeah, these movies sneaked through on the like Sci-Fi Channel. Like, we'll put your movie out no matter what it is if you make it. These movies sneak through. They're actually good. Evil Aliens is the budget is clear. Like when you're watching it, it's cheesy, but the pacing is good. The
2005.
gore is-
I love that. I mean, I feel like that's one of the sad things about cinema today is those channels that were drive-in. There were B movies back in like the 30s and 40s, and drive-in movies in the 50s and 60s, and then there were late night cable offerings in the 1980s and 90s, and as you said, like Sci-Fi Channel and all that, it still existed, and so many magical movies like Creeping Terror only exist because there were these channels to make that kind of film.
Yes.
I don't know what those channels are now, to be honest.
they're gone. They're mostly gone, I think.
So I'm gonna rent Evil Aliens then, or watch it, or borrow it from you, so that I can enjoy.
Yeah,
enjoy
come
that
over and
bygone
watch
era.
it. Let's, yeah. Well,
I'll come watch
Tracy, you and Frank come over. We'll watch it.
I was gonna say
It's way better
I've
than
never
you
seen
would expect.
or heard of it. But you had me at aliens in the title. Also, you put back up the poster. It says invasion. I think it was too quick for me to say. An unstoppable invasion, an unlikely band of heroes. We're in big trouble! Exclamation point.
We're in big trouble.
I'm not usually a fan of exclamation points in taglines because
For
I
taglines, yeah.
feel like we're in big trouble. Period is like
Yeah, but at the time of this being introduced, like it was introduced basically on physical media. That
I
was a
say-
special time.
I just want
Special
to.
time.
It was, yes,
Saying-
the direct-to-DVD, absolutely.
You're saying unrated theatrical, and you didn't get theatrical. I like Ballyhoo. I'm here for that. But like, you didn't get theatrical. And you had me at Alien Invasion, so I'm gonna say be best because I like Alien Invasion movies.
What's
Why?
the supermarket movie? Because I'm curious about that one. Kind of like the low-budget Mist, I guess.
Oh shit. Hang on. Okay. Tracy, start this thing. Start when bad films happen to good actors.
No, dude, we have to go back. I haven't done my be
Yeah,
best.
she
Oh,
doesn't
right,
have
you
Be
have to
Best,
do
Be
yours.
Bad, Be Best.
Do your-
Yeah.
So-
think
I
of
can
it
go
while
get the
she
movie
does it.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
So aggressive. I mean, my be best because as I have aforementioned in this podcast, because I love Don Siegel's 1956 Invasion of the Body Snatchers so much. I went back, and it's funny because I remember when I was a much younger person, Abel Ferrara, right, who gave us Miss 45 and the Bad Lieutenant and a
Bad
lot
Lieutenant, yeah.
of sleazy things that I like that I probably shouldn't because they're bad for me, but I like
King
them.
of New York.
I love King of New York. But what's amazing about 1993's version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers is that Warner Brothers allowed Abel Ferrara, Miss 45, to do like at the time the third remake of Jack Finney's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I was like, okay, I got to talk about this, on this panel for shameless plug, Cinema Bizarro. And I saw it opening night because I was that person, because I was younger. And I remember really loving it because I saw it, it was 93. And I thought that Abel Ferrara was in his, I'll put up the poster. He was picking up on what Jack Finney was putting down in terms of, I am desperately afraid of conformity and groupthink and all the nonsense that comes from that, both from artist's point of view, political point of view, whatever.
I
And
saw this movie in the theaters in New York City when Frank and I were at NYU.
yeah, and so this film for me, I saw opening night because I loved Don Siegel's film. I think Philip Kaufman's 78 version is absolutely pitch perfect for its era, post Watergate, fear. And I was like, Abel Ferrara, I know he's kind of sleazy and I like him and I shouldn't. I feel a little guilty. And I was like, oh my God, Warner Brothers let him make a studio film. I was like, that makes no sense. I mean, even in college, I was that asshole. I was like, that makes no sense that Abel Ferrara Warner Brothers film. And then I saw this film and I thought, God, this is so smart because this was greenlit after the 91 Iraq War. That was the context. And most of it is set on the military base. A very preternaturally beautiful Gabrielle Noir is the lead,
Yeah.
which is interesting because when you read Finney's novel, when you see Don Siegel's Dr. Banal, in Kevin McCarthy, when you
Tim McCarthy, yeah.
Donald Sutherland do it again in 78. Abel Ferrara, who has no problem exploiting and being awful to women on screen. Hashtag, I still like his filmmaking. I don't like his politics. But I'm like, that guy is going to suddenly take Finney's property and tell it through a teenage girl lens, and give her agency. I'm like, I am so confused. But and then there's a scene. This is me being way too for this category, where she's in the bathtub because bubbles, and she's listening to a thing. I'm like, this is like basically Pretty Woman with like Julia Roberts, except it's a, suddenly Abel Ferrara has like tendrils going up her nose. And it's basically if you're into pod people movies, I am. He's using a pod situation. It's rape in a bathtub with an underage girl. And then that is so loaded and fucked up. But the way he does it, if you read the real Finney novel, I'm like, he's actually skating on that edge with what Finney said the pods do. And that Abel in 93 is like, I'm upset about what HW is doing in Iraq. And the conformer, everybody is in the group think that Finney was worried about, that Walter Wanger, who, whatever, was in prison, came out and does the Don Siegel film, setting this film on a military base 2 years after HW is like, we're going into Iraq, is political, it's smart, and it's cool. Abel Ferrara is at his best a grindhouse director who I think hates women. But the way he puts that into this mainstream Warner Brothers movie is fucking amazing. So I have very complicated feelings about it, but I honor the filmmaking. And so I'm going to say be best before you gents can go in, because, ladies should talk about these things. And what's amazing about it, because I rewatched it recently, when Jennifer Tilly is the lead in this, and she's like, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And she does this thing. It's like, it plays differently in a Trump America where this might mean other things. I think her performance is better than I acknowledged when I saw it in college. I think this film is worthy of the 78 Kaufman film. I think it's one of the best sequels ever. And I think it was a meditation on America's war that is problematic. And so I would say it's super political and interesting, even as I don't like the feminist, not feminist situation in this, but at least it's interesting. It's be best. I am leading the charge. You gents can say what you want. But
so you have given your opinion on this film.
Yeah, because I wanted to pick it because I think it's really
important. And if we say it's not good, it sounds like we'll be in trouble. But Frank, go. Frank, go.
I embrace both you boys. I'm just saying, when I saw it again a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh my God, this is smarter.
I love this movie. I love it. I'm already a be back. Frank, what is your thing?
No, yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like Abel Ferrara is not my favorite director. This is an interesting example, though, where you take that guy with his very intense sort of "I'm here to shock you" approach to filmmaking, and then you kind of force him to tell this narrative story, this Hollywood story, reinvent it and all that. It comes out really interesting. So I probably enjoy it more than any other Abel Ferrara film. So yeah, I would say.
And Anne points out, because Anne was in Foreign Sales at the time, that Ferrara was a star director in Foreign, of course, but the fact that Warner Brothers was like, we're bringing you in, is like, it's crazy. Because if you look
the weirdness of that moment, of that decision, and I mean, the problem is that was, that was the heyday of indie film, but I think not of women filmmakers. I think it took a little longer for them to really be given the proper spotlight. So like choosing Abel Ferrara for it's not as out of in context is not that surprising that he would be elevated and all of his misogynistic tendencies sort of just overlooked. It's still a weird movie and for that reason, you know, worth seeing.
I think it's better than I remember. Todd, have you seen it recently? What do you think?
Oh, I've seen the movie a bunch of times. I own a copy of it. I think it's great. I'm a body snatcher person, so I like all of them. I even like The Invasion with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig, which is the worst of them for sure.
Absolutely.
But I still think it coasts by very well on conceptual stuff. Abel Ferrara's Body Snatchers, I like. If I was an Abel Ferrara fan, I would have thought at the time that he kind of sold out and didn't do what Abel Ferrara was doing at the time.
If you wanted to see more Bad Lieutenant,
But if you're a Body Snatcher fan, it does it. It's the Body Snatcher version of Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
It's the military.
I was gonna make that
great metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely. I also, one of the things I remember about it more vividly than remembering the movie, because I haven't seen it since it came out, is the fact that it was delayed. Like, yes, they let him make the movie, but then there was controversy, and for a while it wasn't released. Because I remember being at some film festival or something, and Abel Ferrara was there speaking, and somebody, you know, someone in the audience said, "Oh, aren't you mad that your amazing version of Body Snatchers hasn't been released?" And he was very laissez-faire. He's like, "Well, I don't know. You saw it, so whatever."
But I think
he literally said that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, I just close out quickly, but like, you know, I saw it opening night because I loved the first two and I grew up with them, and I read Jack Finney and I'm obsessed with his Time and Again, which is, I think, my favorite time travel novel ever. And
a great book.
I think Redford.
My wife loves that book.
Yeah, the Redford bought it outright, and I don't know what's going to happen. But this film, I remember seeing it opening night in Westwood. So it was like I was a college student. I'm at UCLA, and it was great. And I was like, God, this is good. It's not as good as the first two, but it's not embarrassing. And then when I watched it again recently, I thought, God, the conformity of the military, using that as a metaphor as our country went in, some of us might argue, erroneously, the first time in 91, right? This film comes out 3 years later, which means it was, you know, reacting to HW's war with Saddam. Watching it, knowing what I know now, it's better than I remembered. But the visceral pod rape of the women
in the bubble bath,
it's so. But it's also, if I were a smart person, I could do an essay of Pretty Woman listening to Prince with Richard Gere saying how much. Same shot with Gabrielle Anwar, and I think, you know, I think
they're equally problematic.
It's weird, the misogyny. It's absolutely weird and, you know, unavoidable, the misogyny of this particular movie, because Abel Ferrara was the fucking chief of this movie and he's a misogynist. Like, there's no way around it. But the concept is so good, and that's what I say about The Invasion. The Invasion is a corporate version of this movie. It's the most corporate version of this movie, and it can't get hurt because, like, as an entertainment, because the concept is so good.
But here's the thing, though, that's interesting to Todd's point, because he and I have made similar points.
I wasn't done.
But I'm just saying. Just because, right, with what you're saying right now, the fourth pod movie from a major studio, Warner Brothers, same studio, we took the pod people out of Invasion. It turned into we can regurgitate in bodily fluids, which seems stupid, but at the time it was because I had talked to my friend David Gambino, who's been on the show, who was the production executive on Invasion, the 2007 film we're talking about, the fourth version of Warner Brothers and they were reacting to the bird flu of the time. So they thought the smart development moves take the pod out of the pod person movie. So you have people barfing into people's faces as a thing. I would argue that was kind of stupid and gross and not in a good way. But post-COVID, if you watch Invasion, to Todd's point, it plays differently post-COVID for those of us who have lived through it. So that film, that version in Body Snatchers may have more merit because it was super dumb when it came out. But and it bombed, even though you had Kidman playing the Sutherland Banal character and you had Daniel Craig. They had to do
Well, I mean, arguably the problem with the movie was they cast Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig in two roles where you had to watch people get taken over and become soulless. And I'm sorry, those two actors are not. They're movie stars and they're gorgeous, but I've never found them to be soulful as performers.
But
so there's that.
Just to put it in context, because David was on the movie, the film, that Invasion was held up for over a year because when they shot Invasion the first time without a successful film version they could use, it was before Craig was Bond. So he wasn't anybody. He was like the hot guy who was cast. He wasn't Bond yet. He didn't have that.
Yeah.
And so then they filmed it and then it didn't work. And they had to wait for a reshoot because it didn't work. And he came back as Bond. So David Gambino, as one of the producers of the film, was like, and then Daniel Craig came back and he and I had a certain relationship, in the trailer before. And then he came back and he was Bond. And he's like, he loves Craig and Craig was amazing, but Craig now had an opinion. So the reshoots were impacted by, I am now Bond, so I have a thought, even though I was the guy who was not cast. So this is a hodgepodge movie of, early 2000s matchmaking. So it's a compromise, but I would argue to the larger point, which is why I want to talk about it, post-COVID, it plays better than it did in its day. So who are we to judge? It's worth watching. It's the least, I agree with Todd. It's the least of the four. I think it has more merit now than it did. And when I watched it again after Abel Ferrara's version, I was like, you know what? This story, to Todd's point, which I think he's 100% right on, is so good that what's interesting is that you have 56, 78, 93, and 2004, is it?
3, 4, yeah.
So you have Warner Brothers taking an independent film, remaking it 3 times, an independent film, Don Siegel for the Win, as a metaphor. And depending on when you saw it, if you're in 56, you're like, it's a McCarthyism thing. Don Siegel will tell you, no, it wasn't. Reads that way. 78, post-Watergate. Philip Kaufman would say, no, it's not. Reads that way, right? And then you see 93 in April 1st. I don't fucking care about politics. I can't believe a studio has hired me to make a movie. It's a reaction to Iraq. He will tell you it's not that. And then 07 absolutely developed post-bird flu by the director, Oliver Hirschenberger. Still works. So great stories can transcend time, eras, even in studio or independent. And again, it's plant-based. So that's me tonight. There you go.
I agree with you. Plant-based stuff. Speaking of plant-based, there's all these smells of dinner coming into
Let's do it. Let's wrap it up, baby. Let's do it.
So really fast, I'm going to jump us to the boost. Tracy, what's your movie you want people to watch now?
I'm cheating because I haven't found a film that I really want to boost because I'm bitter and I think the films aren't good right now. So I'm going to boast a TV show that,
you go with an old movie
that dropped on March 30th on Paramount Plus, but I'm bringing it up on our program because the Bonafides is Guy Ritchie producing. The Bonafides is Jez Butterworth co-writing with the other gentleman whose name has just popped out. I am so sorry, but he created The Jackal on TV with Eddie Redmayne. And it stars Helen Mirren, Tom Hardy, Pierce Brosnan, and Patty Considine. So to my mind, that should be a film, but we don't make good films for adults anymore. I, of course, am talking about Mobland. I want to promote this film. It's brutal, it's violent, it's smartly written.
It's not a film, that's a TV series, Tracy.
Yeah, I've done before, because we don't make good films anymore. I am
It's all
promoting
moved to TV, yeah.
Mobland because this is a film cast with Guy Ritchie producing, and it's really fucking great. And the first episode dropped. I think it plays every Sunday night, but the first one's there. It's really worth watching. Paramount Plus often gives free 30-day things, so maybe wait till it's all there and buy it. But this is a really brilliantly written, classically directed, beautifully acted movie stars. This is everything I want in a film that I'm not seeing anymore. So now I go to Paramount Plus and I want to boost it in case you haven't seen it.
All right, I'll do mine. Yesterday was April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
We've talked about this movie before on this show. I am boosting April Fool's Day.
Oh, sure.
I think this movie is great. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Do you guys like it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, again, that was our generation. So that's one of those movies that I watched late night on cable TV, and probably a little too young to be watching at the time.
Yeah, we were all too young when we saw this movie.
Yeah.
But also, it was like April Fool's Day is cool for me because it was meta before meta was cool. There wasn't a lot of meta shit. April Fool's Day was the first one that I saw when I was a kid. I was like, oh, they're making fun of themselves. Oh, yes. I like this.
Yeah, you're right. It was the first one to comment on the tropes and all that in a way that was really fun. So that's your book he's talking about, obviously.
Yes.
So Larry Blamire, I'm a fan of him as well. So
oh my God, he wrote 5 chapters that are gonna blow your mind. He's so talented. We love him so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this film. I remember seeing it in the theater as a very young person, and
you weren't running projectors at that time?
It's not. I paid to see it. It wasn't at my.
You were about to.
It wasn't at my theater, but I loved Amy Steele because she's my favorite Friday the 13th final girl.
I'm with you. It's hard to be critical of Adrienne of the original.
Yeah, Adrienne King. Yeah.
Because she's very good, but Amy Steele was just as tight as a performance could be.
I think Amy Steele is so awesome. Like she was in, I remember The Power of Matthew Starr, which I loved as a kid.
Oh, I remember that.
And I'd seen her in, Friday the 13th, obviously part 2, and then Vienna 3. But like, I just feel like she has, I don't know. I mean, she's cute as a button, obviously, but she's interesting and she's grounded and she seems very real. And I remember as a young person watching her in Friday the 13th, I was like, God, I'd like to think I would act that way. Like she seemed like a proxy for me as a viewer. And then she shows up in April Fool's Day. And I remember seeing that as a young kid. And she's wearing like cute tie and she's like totally everyone's crushing on her. And I remember being so surprised. I'm not going to say it and people haven't seen it, but I remember being so surprised how the film ended. And then I remember the title. I was like, she fooled me. She personally fooled me. I thought that performance was so clever within the confines of what April Fool's Day is doing, that she leans into a misdirect and a this and a that. And I think upon reflection as an older person, I think it's kind of a great performance that maybe people don't, again, like Jamie Lee, who got no credit for being the best scream queen. I think people, because she's in a
delayed credit. I think she's been given credit by now.
Now she has, but
Jamie Lee Curtis has been given all the credit.
But to her credit, when she got her Oscar, she said in her speech, I want to thank you to all the fanboys and fangirls and my genre people who kept me alive.
Yeah, God bless her for doing that.
People don't do that.
But she did not thank all the misogynistic dudes who like seeing her tits in Trading Places. And that's a huge part of her market.
Only had 30 seconds. Todd, sit down. I think she's great. I love Amy
But
Steele.
that was every 80s actress, at that time. That was,
Amy
very
Steele, you know what? I
Hollywood
heard,
movies.
I think I read this. I know I saw this in one of the documentaries. Amy Steele is now a therapist, and she gave up acting many moons ago. And now she's a therapist, but she's so cool and appreciates the fan love because of April Fool's Day and the Friday the 13th. She does the cons a lot. You can still meet her, and she's still cute as a button.
Yeah, she does it. They all go to therapy. Sid, the guy from what's his name? Sid, what's his face?
Haig.
Haig.
Sid Haig?
Thank you. Sid Haig was a therapist in Simi Valley for 10 years before he was rescued from a proper profession to do Rob Zombie movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, it's all good. But
do you have anything you want to boost, Frank, before we bail out of here?
I guess I'll mention, circling back to the premise of my comic book. I watched a lot of witch movies and for inspiration, and one that is not properly celebrated, in my opinion, among horror fans is Season of the Witch.
yes,
George Romero's film, which totally was
Not the Nick Cage movie.
Not the Nick Cage movie.
And not
It's
Halloween.
1970 or so, so it was like after Night of the Living Dead and
but it's all it's the
obviously before
housewives.
Dawn of the Dead. But
It's
it's
the
a
Housewives.
really interesting movie where being witchcraft is sort of treated as a way to escape the humdrum life of being a housewife, which was very much what I was going for with my
The
comic.
patriarchy.
I've never seen the movie when I wrote it, so when I did, I was like, there's so much inspiration here, and it's set in the same era.
I love that.
I'm glad you brought that up. I wouldn't have thought to bring that up, and I agree. I'm a huge Romero fan. I have all his movies. Season of the Witch is one of the more interesting, uncelebrated Romero movies.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
it's almost more of a drama in some ways. Yeah, but it's really
It's very much a drama.
But
Yeah.
isn't it interesting when Romero has a predominantly female cast? That's the one that's not celebrated.
Yeah,
No
I
kidding.
I
and
agree
because
with you.
it's a character. I mean, all of his movies actually. Have
It's
great
a
characters,
great drama.
but it is a drama. Maybe, and he's probably course corrected. Like, oh wait, I need to make more money than that.
No,
You're
there's-
probably right, though. You're probably right.
Again, this is the thing though that's interesting because I think sometimes when you talk about Romero, they don't remember that movie. I mean, I do because I remember seeing it because I have really good parents. They rented it for me, but like it is an interesting outlier in his canon.
Yes.
And it's interesting to talk about why that's not the one remember, because the truth is Romero made a lot of good movies. And I think people, again, this is the ghettoization of horror that Todd and I talk about this a lot. It's at the end of the day, it's like Wes Craven made so much money for New Line. He wound up getting to direct Meryl Streep in a drama.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like Wes Craven made a like legit straight drama with Meryl Streep.
Nobody, thinks about. Yeah, it's true.
You don't.
Yeah, but he started in like the
Porn.
worst kind of exploitation.
Absolutely, but like the evolution of it as a storyteller, it's like everyone starts somewhere, and hopefully we grow as artists. But I don't denigrate where Wes started or Sean started porn, right? But like they also had skills and are amazing filmmakers, and then started looking like Heather Langenkamp. I mean, Nancy for the age, right? So like again, stop ghettoizing horror because you want to be like a little white glove person. It's like sometimes the best roles for women happen to be in genre films. I mean, talk to Sigourney.
doubt.
I mean,
And I think Romero's a perfect example of someone who time and again, you referenced Day of the Dead earlier. Like every time out, his movies had so much more going on beneath the surface. Like he's the masterclass if you want to see how much more horror can do than just deliver the sort of B-movie thrill.
100%.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not happy with Reagan and consumerism, so I'm now doing like Dawn of the Dead in a mall. You know
Right.
what? John Carpenter is like, I don't really like Reagan. Hashtag they live. Right.
Yeah.
These are people who are making political films, but through the lens of really smart horror. So people who are read in get it, and people who like horror are happy too. And when you can work on both levels, like, isn't that what we're trying to do as storytellers? And I think that's why I just, when people want to look down on our horror films, I'm like, I understand your critiques. I understand, particularly from a female point of view, but like, you're missing out on some of the best performances and character creation from a Gen X point of view, because before it was cool, women were way more.
Don't make it generational, Tracy. I think you're absolutely right.
Specific.
I just want to say you're absolutely right about what horror is doing, the genre, artistically. But don't make it about a generation.
Each generation does it differently, is my point.
No. And the old generations do it their way, but you can see it through your lens. Yeah. And the new, like if we talk about new horror movies, like one of the ones that like blew my mind was Talk to Me. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
It blew my mind. So here's a movie that can make, as an old person, I'm old as fuck.
No, you're not.
And I'm relating to these teenage characters.
That would make me old as fuck. So I disagree.
Okay. I apologize. But I'm old as fuck. You guys are fine. But all I'm saying is,
chicken here.
Yeah, what that movie did was beyond generational. And I just don't want to make.
Well, no, but when she says Gen X, though, she's really talking about the audience. All the movies she's naming, they were made by Gen X filmmakers. They inspired future filmmakers from our generation.
And,
you know,
as we were inspired by boomers.
We were inspired by the creeping terror.
People hate to admit how we are just another stage of what the boomers were.
But,
or what the silent generation was. Or do you know what that is?
Talk to Me is a great example, though, because again, if you're old like me, I've seen all that before, but what I liked about it was a younger generational lens on something I've already seen a bunch of times, but they brought fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Scares. So to me, it's still when you do this, you're standing on this. I have love for Talk to Me. I have love for all the things we're talking about. I love the creeping terror. I know I shouldn't, but I love it. And but this,
nothing wrong with loving it.
But it generationally, there's a different emphasis on certain things because of the era that it's made. But I think the real artists who care have seen the things we're talking about, and they bring it into their generation. And I know I try to do that. I mean, the Belfast movie I'm this close to delivering is absolutely inspired by Aliens. Absolutely. It was by design. But I do think we've done some things that are fresh, but I'm not going to be here like, oh, it's not based on that. No, it's inspired by what made me happy. And now as a producer, I'm trying to do my version for a new generation. Whether it works or not, I hope it does. But I know what I'm doing. And it was very clear with our director and our producer team, this is what we're aspiring to because we have seen greatness before that we all love. And that's the cool thing. And I think if you're an author, it's the same thing. Sometimes we're more flowery, sometimes we're more Hemingway-esque, but it's about the stories that we tell, which is why, just wrapping it up, this podcast is just like, let's lift up story. And, the fact that we're talking about a 1964 DIY, as the kids would say today, movie. Awesome that it endures. Awesome.
DIY slightly cringe.
But isn't it cool that we're still? How many films were made in 1964? Todd, how many films from 1964 have we done in our over 200 episodes?
This is, I think, the second one.
The last one would have come from me too. Then Kitten with a Whip.
That's
Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and Margaret for the Age, but but this is the thing, though. This is what's great, and so no matter what TikTok or whatever, media, good stories will endure. And that's,
absolutely.
I want to end on that point because we're all creatives here. And that we're talking about this, nothing budgeted movie this many years later, you're winning. Be memorable. Film and writing can do that, you know?
Oh
And
yeah.
it's awesome. And that's why we're still in the game. We're all riverboat gamblers
Yeah.
betting on come. Come on.
Right.
So-
We'd be happy to be in the worst movie ever.
Ever. Which we're going to have to work on because we just talked about the creeping terror. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Francis, for bringing it back.
Check out Frank's comic book.
Everybody-
on the link.
Oh yeah, Wicked Town. We did the campaign in November, but it's still live, meaning I haven't closed. It's still available for late pledges if you're interested in backing the first issue, because it'll be up for a little while longer, and then I have to start sending out the books. And we're trying to, hoping to get to a threshold where the next like trigger of rewards comes, which is going to be, I think, a bookmark. So help everybody who backs the campaign
Get Frank a
by going
bookmark.
over there
God
and
damn it.
support
By the
him.
way, bet on the aspiration. Buy your comic book now, because if it turns into something, #investment, in a world where Bitcoin is taking over and your social security is being stolen, do it now.
Yeah,
Buy
it'll be
comic-
the only thing left of value after your social security is stolen.
Yeah, it's gone.
Knock
So
on wood.
comic
The only thing that matter after the fascists take your life from you is
Yeah.
Murder Valley.
do the thing. Do the thing, everybody.
That's right.
I love that we all have books. We all have books.
Dude, we're creators. Let's go. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thanks for always supporting.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you guys for having me on again. It was super fun.
Thanks, everybody. Be kind to each other. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. I ended it. I think.
Roth?